Hey, it's Georgie from POCculture.com. I'm here with Robin De Jesus of Tick Tick Boom. Robin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to hear my name, my last name said correctly. Thank you.
I wanted to start off by saying congrats on your Hollywood Critics Association and Satellite Award nominations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. My first question is, how did you first get into theater, and what was your journey like?
Of course. Well, first I want to let the audience know that I live in a very loud neighborhood with highways all around me. So, the Bronx personality and character will be heard in the background as I talk, not just from my mouth. I got into theater when I was in middle school, heading into high school. I always wanted to sing as a kid. I had a terrible voice. Puberty happened. Somehow with puberty, I learned to match pitch. And we used to sing a lot of theater songs in my middle school choir. And I had this really wonderful choir teacher, Mr. Sylvester, and his accompanist, Pat Chernow, who was also my piano teacher sometimes. And, they would always encourage us to learn songs from Broadway. And my 8th grade year, we did a 15-minute version of Grease. And I was Kinnicky or something like that. And because they're in 15 minutes, there aren't even characters, to be honest. And I loved it. I was like, yo, this is so cool being someone else. There was something about it that made me feel very empowered. And my friend Noel Senna, who did a lot of theater, said, yo, Robin, they're doing a production of Grease in the next town over, Darien, this real bougie town. And I thought, hell yeah, I want to audition for that. That'd be dope. I auditioned. I got into the ensemble. I used to go into rehearsals, with my basketball shorts and my matching jersey, coming in from the hood. And some of the kids were like weird about me. A lot of kids were also very kind, but some of the kids were elitists and were bulliers. There were these 2 young girls specifically who had it in for me for no reason. And there were a couple transgressive moments that I found out about. And I remember one day thinking, yo, these 2 girls are making fun of me, but I'm having so much fun in these rehearsals that I don't care. And the fact that I was conscious enough to clock that, I think was the thing that let me know that this was something special, that it was something healing, and then I became obsessed with theater. Like I would nerd out and go to the library, read as many scripts as possible, take out as many CDs as possible, go on what used to be Blue Gobo, was that the name? There was like a website that was like a YouTube for theater. And I used to go to that and just see mad videos, and that's where the obsession began.
Oh, I love that. Especially that's very mature for you to be thinking like, oh, well, I love this, so I'm going to keep doing it, when you were going through that. I feel like I would have shut down and gone the opposite direction. So I'm glad that you did that because...
Oh, I hear you. But sometimes divinity is funny. Sometimes divinity finds... There's certain... I think we always want to see ourselves in our full power at all times, but it doesn't always align that way. But sometimes there are these divine moments where like you receive the message and you know what you're supposed to know in that moment and what is best for you. And I think I just was really fortunate that in that moment that alignment happened and I was able to with consciousness clock it. But it wasn't always.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you stuck with it because your performances are always really good. I would be kicking myself if I didn't ask you. I know you got close to Andrew Garfield on set. Did he let you in on the secret that he was going to be in Spider-Man?
No, he did not. And I felt, I knew that people were thinking that maybe he was going to be. So I always try to like listen for context clues, but I never asked because I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna let him be and not try to, I'm just getting to know him and, we're playing these like super tight friends. So I'm gonna give him his space and not be nosy, but you better believe I was thinking about that thing all the time.
I would too.
I want to know about the franchise money. I want to know about the franchise money. That's what I want to know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, at the premiere, I was curious like how many people were going up to him asking that, to be honest, because like who wouldn't,
Oh, I'm sure. But it's also funny because like I mean, would you really expect him to tell you?
Of course not,
Well,
no. But
maybe,
like
yeah.
a lot of journalists have no chill in their interviews. They'll ask him straight up, and it's like I want that level of confidence. You
Yeah.
know they can't answer, and you ask it so blatantly. I love that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, so to Tick Tick Boom, I was curious, because you worked with Lin Manuel Miranda before on In the Heights. What was it like to work with him again for this?
It was beautiful. It was really great because there's that thing of like, your friends are brilliant, right? Like you've seen their work, but then sometimes you almost relearn it or are shocked to remember how brilliant your friends are. And with
Yeah.
this, like, of course, I was curious to know what he'd be like as a director. I worked with him on the auditions, but I was really curious to know what his work was going to be like visually, and just the day-to-day stuff. And was he gonna lean into his DP, our bomb DP, Alice Brooks? Was he gonna like lean on her more and let her take the lead? And it wasn't that. He was very much the director, which allowed her to very much be the cinematographer. And he was amazing on the fly. He was amazing with his notes. He was amazing with just like the joy he brought to set, the joy that affirmed the fact that like, if you bring on negative energy, like maybe that's disrespectful to what we're trying to create, unless it's appropriate to the scene. There are going to be days where Andrew and I are going to have heavy scenes and we're going to be maybe a little mopey around set. But,
Mm-hmm.
there's something about that childlike, fun, playful, grateful energy that is incredibly infectious and makes it just easier to go to work. And also like the fact that the movie's actually amazing is like, it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, like you're talking about the joy, but also like the other stuff. Um, the song No More like really reminds me of that because you have like how much they don't like their apartment building, and then you're just having so much fun in the new one, you know?
Yeah. We wanted there to be that paradox because it goes back and forth. The verses are very like rugged and jagged and messy and punk rock. And then the apartment, when you go into the new apartment, it gets like waltzy and dramatic and elevated and all that ish. And it was so hard to do that number. But it was so hard just because there was a special effect that we had to execute. And the special effect was that every time we burst into those waltz moments in the new apartment and we'd go into slow motion, but we had to figure out how to go into physical slow motion while our lyrics were still in real time. And in order to do that, we had to film it sped up a lot. So that means that all of those choruses, we had to learn to lip sync, act, and dance at like 3 or 4 times the normal speed. Choreography that was intended to look fascinating in slow motion, but you're doing it 3 to 4 times the speed. And that was crazy. But the blessing was that last sequence at the end of the number, that day we shot it about 22 times and we only have about 2 good takes that we could actually use for the movie. But man, it was fun getting those 2 takes. So much fun.
Yeah, it was really good. So
Yeah.
you can tell that you worked really hard on it. What was that like though? If you had to do the choreography, you said like 4 times as fast, then did you have to talk like 2 times as fast so that it was different rates for both
Oh,
then?
yeah. Like
Like,
even when I have that sequence where I keep singing, "Is this real life?" I
mm-hmm.
remember we fooled around with the same special effect at a different speed. And at one point, I remember I was lip syncing, and it sounded like this: "Is this real life? Is this real life? Is this real life? Is this real life?" Like just literally saying it that fast.
Right.
It was crazy, and it's also hard to trust, but I did get to peep kind of what it would look like on the monitor. And I think that once I saw the execution, once I saw the product, not the execution, it allowed me to relax and surrender to it. so that I could execute it with ease. Because in the beginning, some of those takes looked like my face looked like I was concerned because you could see the fear in my eyes at the speed we were going.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you say that like why or no more was more challenging to shoot?
Definitely no more. Why was interesting because why was difficult because that was my second day of shooting. My first day was just one scene with no dialogue, just sitting around improvising with Lin. And then my second day of work, my first dialogue scene was the status reveal scene in the office.
Ouch.
So yeah, you gonna start me there, Lin? Like,
good luck.
Exactly, and it definitely felt like I was being initiated into something. And then after we finished the scene, we went into real life, or maybe it was the inverse. It might have been the inverse, but regardless, it was just a day of learning a lot. And so the fact that my first day of shooting, we were also going to shoot this special effect thing was like, oh, okay, this is a really intense day. But emotionally, I felt ready for real life that day. So that's why I think it was easier. No more, it was more difficult just because of the physicality of it. Dealing with the special effects stuff. It was fun. It was joyous. I think that actually, I'm just realizing this in real time, that rehearsing that to me is why Andrew and I have such great chemistry on camera. Because when you're both not dancers and you have to learn difficult choreography, it's like, it's real vulnerable up in there. You know what I'm saying? So I think that might have actually been the blessing that came from that, was that it allowed me and Andrew to marinate with one another.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of like no more, I'm sorry, not no more. Why and is this real life? That plot with Michael really surprised me because going into the movie, you know, I didn't know very much. I wasn't aware of this play or anything. So I was like surprised. I was like, oh my God, that's me, you know, like a queer Latina, which I've never felt represented on both of those levels before. And then on top of that, you know, we have gay man and a straight guy's like lovey-dovey friendship, which was just like really touching to see. And I wanted to ask you, what was it like to bring that unique friendship to life?
It's one of the things I'm most proud of in the movie. I just, you know, I'm fortunate enough to work in theater where straight men and gay men do coexist and have lifelong intimate friendships. But we don't ever get to see that modeled in like major stories. I've seen like bro movies where there's like one hetero friendly bro-y gay dude who's like, you don't really know much about their sexuality other than they're gay, you know? And like there's like it's like a distant friendship or more of an acquaintance. So with this, it was like, man, there's so much opportunity here. And I think what allowed us to center that more was after the second or third day of table work, we all realized that this was a love story between Jonathan and Michael as well. And Andrew was the first person to actually label it such. And I think that in the labeling, we realized the weight that it held. But even when I say weight, it wasn't weighty. It was actually really light and fluffy. You know, it was like little moments like where I get to touch Jonathan's face and kiss him on the cheek. And it's like sexuality it's not even a thought in anyone's mind. All you see is love, you know?
Yes.
And that's how it should be. And I'm happy that that's out there. I'm happy that Lin cultivated that, because I know for him that's really important. For Andrew, it's really important. He loves and adores the queer community, LGBTQIA folks all around. And then what was the other part of your question? My bad. I feel like you asked something else too.
No, just what was it like to bring it to life? Because like you said, we never see that. So
it wasn't work, I have to say. And I just want to throw that in there. That was the coolest part. It sort of, while we consciously knew that it was an important part of the film, it really just happened very organically, which is why I think some people watch the movie and don't even clock it. because it's not intended to be eventful. It just is. But I'm grateful for the folks that do consciously clock it. And I actually have I'll just say one more thing on it, which is a friend of mine that I grew up with is a teacher back home. And she's actually using the film as a tool to bring up that theme specifically for her students, which I think is really freaking cool.
Yeah, I agree. Because like you said, you know, like you touch his face, you kiss him on the cheek, and it's like, it's so cute, you know, and like sexuality is not brought up. It's just like just being friendly, which is like something we need to like normalize more, you know?
Oh, totally. And also just like, it's like sometimes hetero culture makes sexuality so eventful.
Yes.
That it's just like, y'all calm down. I'm just trying to talk to you. Ain't nobody flirting with you.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. And speaking on that relationship more, what was it like to have that scene where Michael reveals his status and, you know, like it inserts you into this time period when POC AIDS stories have typically been like non-existent? What did it mean to you to get to do that?
Yeah, my best friend, he's Dominic Colon. He's a brilliant playwright and actor, and you know, we talk about HIV and the AIDS crisis and what it did to the Black and Brown communities, to what it's done and still does to Black and Brown communities, and the Black and Brown women that have also been left out of the storytelling because HIV narratives have sort of been colonized and hijacked by predominantly white gay stories. And one of the things that Dominic and I discuss in regards to that is that as queer Latino men, we didn't get to meet our elders because so many of our elders were taken from us during the 80s and 90s. And then we don't have elders even in narrative form unless they're white. And so it's like we're out here fending for ourselves, and or even believing that we didn't exist in that period or in other period pieces. So I like to believe that when it comes to me and Tick Tick and also Boys in the Band, which takes place in 1968, I feel like me being in these films is an insertion of our ancestors. It's an acknowledgement that we did in fact exist during this time, that these themes and events did in fact affect us. So it feels like a form of reparations in a way. Mm-hmm. And that's a strong word. But it's definitely an insertion.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you get to be in both of these because it's needed and you do a great job. Yeah. And continuing on that topic, how would you like to see that representation improve moving forward?
I would like, well, it's so interesting when we talk about specifically queer Latina folks, because one of the things that I'm seeing is, you know, we've been used as tools to play these super over-the-top, stereotypical, what white people think of Latina folks as, you know, characters. But then this other thing happened where, like, everyone wants queer characters to be noble and to be lawyers and doctors and to make everyone feel safe. And my concern is just write good characters, regardless of whether they're messy. Be conscious of the race, ethnicity, gender, and abilities of your actors. Be conscious because certain themes do present differently with a white actor than a Black actor and a brown actor, right? And like I was so happy for so many years to audition to play a doctor or a lawyer because I was like, wow, that goes against my working class background. But now I've gotten to a place, or not goes against, but it shows range in comparison to my working class background. And now I actually really want to center specifically Latina working class stories, because I want to show that we exist across all demographics. not just bougie gays. There are gays in all spaces. There are gays in all spaces and with all types of personalities. Some are femme, some are not. Some work out 8 times a week. Some don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just very specific niches that we all think of as gay culture, and I just want it to all have more range. And I really want to dedicate my career to be predominantly queer work that showcases range, where sometimes I can be a queer character who presents in a more masculine way, sometimes in a more feminine way. Sometimes I'll be a queer character who wears dresses. Sometimes I won't be. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's and even that is just the basic stuff. Overall, what I want to see are characters that are full-bodied, well-written, deserving of empathy, of sympathy and compassion, allowed to be messy without judgment of the individual and of the demographic that they may represent to you, the viewer.
Yeah. It's like you said, you know, talking about wanting to represent like the working class or auditioning for a doctor is kind of like different from your experience. A lot of times we're not really given the like chance to show our range. We're already like put into a box before you get there.
Well, I just don't like the idea that the only way you, the audience, will acknowledge me as human is if I'm a doctor or lawyer or any other profession that you deem desirable. That's my issue. You know what I'm saying?
That too. Yeah. No, sorry. I muted myself on accident and I was like, yeah. And you were like,
no,
you see me? I'm like, yes, no, I do. Like, oops.
Like that's the thing for me too. It's like the hierarchies keep existing and I just want to get to the humanity.
Exactly. Speaking of like future projects, I'm sure this was a dream come true for you, because I know, you know, Jonathan Larson had to do with your start because you were in a play of his, I believe, right?
In
Rent, sorry, I couldn't think of it. Is there another project that would be just like a dream come true for you if you got it?
I mean, the dream of all dreams is the play. There's 2 plays. There's the play that my best friend Dominic wrote called The War I Know. It's the first of a trilogy. And he wrote a role for me in it. Essentially, I'm playing him. It's actually a working class story of a Black and brown family, a Puerto Rican family specifically in the Bronx. Totally based off of certain things are very true in the story. Black and brown family affected by the AIDS epidemic and the crack epidemic. And it centers us in the narrative, and it allows us to be messy in every meaning of the word, but in this really freaking just beautiful and funny way. So that's the number one. And then the other one is a play I did called Homos, or Everyone in America, that my buddy Jordan Seavey wrote. And we have a screenplay of it that we're shopping around. And we want to make the movie version of it, the film adaptation. So I think those 2 are the ones.
I want both of those to happen. That sounds amazing. Did you say it was called Homos?
Homos, or Everyone in America.
I'm in.
I'll watch so it good. Right now. That one is like, you can find the play. I'm sure you can buy the script somewhere, but it's the story. It's not told chronologically. It's a story between 2 gay men who fall in love. It's their whole relationship from beginning to end, and the years afterwards where they become friends again, and in a very major event happens in their lifetime, but it's not told chronologically. So it jumps around, and because it's not told chronologically, it's like different things resonate in different ways, and they fall in love via socio-political debate. So it's like just really fun, delicious, comedic conversations regarding like real shit, but in a fun way. Yeah,
and also the gay experience of being friends with your exes. I love that that's in there too.
Yeah. That's real.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you before we go about you guys had started the film and then, due to COVID, you had to shut down. I wanted to ask you, what was it like for you coming back?
Coming back was really interesting because, when we first started shooting the film, I had been really anxious and I had been having these mini panic attacks on set. And I was just figuring out stuff. I was, dealing with my ego and this desire to be perfect. And so every scene just felt so weighted and like it had to be whatever I decided right was, or I thought it looked like, instead of just being present. And the shutdown sort of it made all of us face a lot of things. And I think that when you face mortality every day, you hopefully get to a place where you go, you know what? If you don't know when you're going to die, then just do what you need to and want to do right now in this moment. If you have a desire, a healthy desire, follow that thing through right now because you don't know when you're going to go. And for me, coming back to set, I didn't want to come back with that nervous, anxious, desperate energy. I wanted to be present. I wanted to create from a place of health and joy. And I can't do all the math right now in on this podcast, but certain things aligned and I got to a much healthier place. And so coming back just allowed me to come back and really just do good work. Really, really come back with intentions and with a desire to center and elevate Jonathan and to do good. And I think in that removal of my ego, it opened me up to this other space where I felt like oftentimes me and Andrew would converse with Jonathan, because there are certain scenes where you felt his presence. Like Andrew and I would look at one another and we didn't say anything, but we knew that there was magic in the room and there was magic happening. And all we had to do was freaking get to the next take and keep staying in flow so that we got to preserve that divinity.
Yeah, every time I've heard you talk about that, I just smile because it sounds so pure, and just the amount of like reverence you guys have put into this film, it really shows. And I love that you said you can feel the presence. I think it comes through in the final product.
Thank you so much.
Of course, I wanted to ask you as well. You had talked about how in the scene where Michael Rose's status, you had made a decision in a prior scene so that it would like work the right way or something, and that during the shutdown you were like thinking about that a lot. I wanted to like confirm, what was that decision exactly?
So the day of the status reveal scene was my first dialogue day.
Sorry.
And I remember that specific scene, I don't know why, because no one told me this. And Stephen Levinson is our screenplay writer, our screenwriter is so good. And there was so much meat on that bone, especially in that scene. And so for whatever reason, I decided that scene was like a crying scene. But intellectually, that didn't feel right to me and in my gut, because I know, so like I said, Dominic Colon is my best friend, and he's been HIV positive for 17 years. He's public about it. And Dominic has always said to me, every time I share my status, I never get to have a release because the person that I'm sharing it with always falls apart. And even though I'm the one who received the diagnoses, I now have to become the caretaker for the person I'm sharing the news with. And I know that to be true, and it's not always fair, but it is real. And for me and Jonathan, in the early portions of the film, it's consistently me taking care of him. So it would make sense that I wouldn't fall apart, but that I would have to take care of him or do something to like get him out the room because now is not the time. And I'm an easy crier, and I could not cry that day. And I didn't process that what I was receiving, I was downloading something that was saying, no, this is not how the scene should go. And And I didn't necessarily receive it as like a message from Jonathan, but I knew that I was going to have to reroute the scene, and that I was going to have to act it in a way where this was not the place, not the time. Jonathan, I'm not doing this with you. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. So was that kind of like improv almost, or did you tell them about it?
The thing is, some of it was in it, but it just meant that I had to hold back on the emotions more in the early portions of the scene, which honestly is more interesting anyway. Like, I had to sit on that secret a little more. And the reason I felt like that affected another scene was because I felt like there needed to be some moment of there's something else going on, since the first half of that scene wasn't a specific way. And it was the scene on the street. I'm wording this so poorly, but hopefully it'll add up. The scene on the street with me and Andrew, where we're arguing about Chubstitute, I felt like the only way the scene in the office would really, really sit properly was if you could get some sense that there was something wrong with me on the street, that there was something else going on. And so I knew that the scene on the street had to be super duper duper, had to have a certain intensity to it that you thought was one thing was really another, but that the second time you saw the movie, you'd be like, whoa, that's what's actually going on. So it's almost like I just wanted to leave a certain subconscious energy for you, if that makes sense. And then the scene where Andrew comes to the apartment and, says, I'm here for you. That's the scene where it's not a big old, like, notice me crying scene, but that was the moment where it felt appropriate for Jonathan to become the caretaker and for me to release.
Right. You weren't crying, but the audience was.
What happened?
Oh, I said you weren't crying, but the audience was. That was like, oh.
Yes. I was like, what happened? I meant to say I didn't hear you. Yes, 100% though. Like, instead of me, it's more interesting to have the audience do it. But then have that moment where you get to see Andrew be my caretaker. Because if I had fallen apart in that scene in the office and then kicked Jonathan out, I think there's a part of the audience that would have been angry at Jonathan to leave me in that state, even though I asked him for it.
Yeah.
And I think it was important for the audience to clock. You may predominantly in this film, you may mostly see Jonathan's friends take care of him, but he did in fact take care of his friends too. It's just that's not what you're seeing in this movie, but in real life, Jonathan was, you will hear this from all of his friends. He was an incredible friend. He always surprised them with gifts. He always wanted to make them feel good, and he always wanted to praise them. So that's more the real Jonathan.
Right. Well, that is all the time we have. So I wanted to say again, congratulations on the film, and I look forward to your next project.
Thank you so much, Georgie. Blessings to you, and I will see you on the next one.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.